Hello and welcome to Expert Link and me, David Ford, and yet another fantastic conversation on co-production. And what a drama we had this week. We have a drama every week. Listen, if you're into co-production, by the way, at whatever level, or you're interested in it at whatever level, these are the places for you. This week was an absolute cracker. We were talking about how to evidence co-production, and it was brilliant. The wisdom that came out of the room, everybody walked, you could see people, the note taking and stuff. Absolutely fantastic conversation. You can join the future conversations in the link below. Sign up to the newsletter actually, and you'll get notified every week of the conversations. They're happening on a Tuesday, but each topic, so you can hop in and hop out when you like. But without further ado, evidencing or gathering the evidence when we're talking about co-production, which is a real challenge. So I think there's some context here to put in. So we have big organisations, more organised, lived experience organisations, and perhaps those who are even less resourced and perhaps living on the edge, on a weekly basis. How do we collect our evidence for co-production and use it in a meaningful way, maybe for bids or grants and stuff like that? Which is a real challenge. So some of the challenges are around time, because it takes time, doesn't it? It's time consuming doing all of this stuff. You've got to have the resources to be able to do it and the capacity to be able to do it, and also the skills to be able to do it. And often, especially if you're a smaller organisation, you don't have all of that stuff. So one of the quotes that, or one of the asks that came out of the conversation was, we need some simple techniques or resources so that we can gather the evidence. So during the conversation, there are about 4 key points that came out, and we're going to share those with you now. By the way, before I share them, please like and subscribe to the channel. It will help us. It helps the algorithms. It helps us spread the conversation around co-production, and helps us all to create the world that we want to be in. A co-produced one, wasn't it? Full of love and sharing of wisdom, and recognizing that we all got some value. So without further ado then, the first thing we talked about was stories, and actually using stories in a meaningful way, because quite often what we don't do is we don't capture those stories, and yet the stories, they help to humanize the stuff that we do, and the bids and the grants and the paperwork. They put a real human element into it. Here's another quote for you. Use qualitative narratives so that people's stories are just as important and valuable, if not more so, because they give a more rounded picture, more wholesome. So how do we do that? We can do that in lots of different ways. We can literally write out the stories of people, or get people to write out their stories. We can maybe do it in little quotes on post-its and things like that. Use a camera to take pictures, and also you can do interviews, can't you, and do record them and put them up in a cloud, and podcasty type stuff, do all that. There's lots of different ways to gather the stories, but it's not just about past backstories and pain. It's actually about the positive stories. I did this with co-production, and it did this, and this meant yada yada yada, and now we're blum blum. How fantastic, So we can do lots of stories like that. We can use we can collect evidence using those sort of techniques, photos and podcasts or audio things. You can do all this on your phone, by the way, and quotes and stuff. You can do that at events. You can do that with other organisations. You can all sorts of different things like that, and you can collect them. I'd love that if we all had the capacity and resources to build these journals of co-productions, the journeys that we go on, that we could use as evidence. But we don't have the time. A lot of us don't have the time or capacity or resource, but we can start to collect some of those stories, either pictorially, auditory, or written. And that's a great place to start when we're gathering the evidence. So the next thing that came out was outcomes, and actually, we live in a world where possibly soft outcomes are soft outcomes are just as important to us as hard outcomes. But as a small organisation, sometimes what we don't do is we don't register or lock them. We might do the big ones, but actually there's lots and lots of smaller outcomes, hard and soft, that we could be logging and using in our evidence, So that sounds quite difficult, but let's reframe it for a second. What does the system love? It's processing. It loves numbers. So let's give it some numbers. We can gather record our outcomes. We could do it in our diaries maybe, or set up, if you're inclined, set up a little spreadsheet. Keep them dead simple. Engage. So a big outcome for me, often when I was working on the streets with some of the guys, a big outcome was somebody pitching up and engaging with me for like half an hour over a cup of coffee and stuff like that, because I know how painful and chaotic their lives were, and for them to commit to half an hour, that's a big thing. Actually, that's an outcome, isn't it? It might not have meant that they moved into the house that day, a new flat that day, or whatever it meant, but some valuable time with another human being interacting. That's cool. So start logging them, guys. And as I said, the system loves numbers. Let's feed it the numbers. Okay, so our next thing we talked about, and I really love this one, is agreements. There's something reassuring about having agreements, isn't there? It helps us to hold ourselves to account, but all parties, all stakeholders to account, doesn't it? So when I first heard this in the room, I was thinking, agreements? And then this, oh, wow, what an incredible tool. So the person that was sharing it uses them on a regular basis. So they, with the lived experience team, if they're going to work with another organisation or another part of the system, they'll set up an agreement. So everybody knows what they're doing. And actually, that's super cool, and it's super cool with longer pieces of work, but it can also be used for shorter pieces of work too, isn't it? Or even consultation groups and things. You have an agreement. So think about it. If it gives us some reassurance and it holds us and others accountable, all the stakeholders accountable, that's a good thing. But what it means is that if we feel a bit more secure, we're more likely to share stuff, because we feel a bit more secure. And actually, those who sign the agreement or agree to the agreement, the other third parties or whatever, it's not third parties, but the other side, if you like, they're more likely to fulfil their part of the bargain. The biggest thing I don't hear, or the biggest thing I do hear all the time when we go around talking to groups, feedback. They can't hear anything. They never get feedback. What happens if there's a simple agreement? This is the way that we're going to interact around the table. This is what we're going to prepare to tell you. This is what we're not prepared to tell you. We're not going to go into our personal stuff. And this is what, we'd like you to do, which is maybe the feedback or whatever it is, you put in the agreement. Something really, really simple. It doesn't have to be long-winded. But actually, it could make a massive, massive difference. I love that one. So next we talked about evaluations, and evaluations to me, because we get involved in evaluations, big long-winded affairs over weeks or months, lots of prepping, lots of training, lots of interviewing, lots of collating all the data, lots of desk research, all that sort of stuff. Evaluations, frightening. On the other part of that, on the other side to that, we do little evaluations when we do our training. We'll get an evaluation sheet. 90% of them get filled in. Often there's no comment. They'll just do the quick tick boxy stuff as they can. But actually, they're worthwhile. Somebody shared in the group how they were using the evaluations to measure where they were with their co-production, and it's how people felt with their co-production, involvement in co-production as they're going along the journey. And I really loved it. What I liked is it was dead simple and dead easy. So it was just half a dozen or so questions with an explanation and things, no doubt. But it was simple questions. It wasn't 94 questions asking you 3 times in 3 different ways what your age is or something like that. Dead simple. Half a dozen questions. And it reminded recently we did a national survey, where there's 5 or 6 questions, but there's 3 key ones. And those 3 key questions, drop-down boxes, A, B, C, D, 1 to 10, or whatever it was, dead easy to use. We've got evaluations out there, dead easy on an one-sided A4 sheet of paper. That's fantastic, and people use them. But you could step up the tech-wise, though, because collating all of that, inputting it, SurveyMonkey. They talked about using SurveyMonkey, and we've been using SurveyMonkey too. And actually, on the paid SurveyMonkeys, they'll collate all the answers for you, and you can download the information in useful forms like Microsoft Excel and stuff. But I think the evaluations thing is really cool. So if I was going to, I mean, there are 4 huge two learnings there, isn't there, or takeaways for us. There's the stories, the outcomes, the agreements, and the evaluations. And those 4 things should help us to gather the evidence for our co-production. So I hope that some of this stuff, these 4 points, have been really, really useful to you. They've been really, really useful for me. And as I've been doing this blog and doing this vlog, and I wrote the vlog earlier, here's a thought for you. So this vlog has been brought to you through the wisdom and the insight of those who attended our conversation on co-production. That's the first thing. It's been co-produced. Marvellous. The group share their stories, and Expert Link agree to produce a vlog and a blog, which is what this is, the vlog part. We've measured the outcomes for us as by the number of attendees, and evaluated the interaction, if you like, by using score systems on the of 1 to 10 on the check-in and check-out. So we're doing that stuff now, and I didn't even realise it. That's because of the wisdom in the room. Enlighten me. Guys, this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. I hope you've got some wisdom to take away to help you to gather your evidence and support any bids or grants that you're applying for. More importantly, if you want to join us on the next conversation, follow the link below. But until next time, guys, love you all. Stay safe.